And joining me now is the Commissioner of the Food and Drug Administration, Dr. Stephen Hahn. Dr. Hahn, welcome to Meet the Press. Happy Easter. And I want to start simply with this. The President would like to lift social distancing guidelines on May 1st. Is that timeline at all realistic in the next 3 weeks?
Well, thank you, Chuck, for having me on the show. Really do appreciate it. I think, obviously, everybody wants to get back to work. I've been hearing that from friends and colleagues around the country. Certainly, there are urgent economic reasons for that. However, I think the task force, the President, the Vice President, all the doctors on the task force are really looking at this from a balanced approach. The primary issue here is the safety and the welfare of the American people. That has to come first. That has to be our first consideration. And I think we've seen the mitigation efforts working. We have really good signs of that now, which I think just is such a great, speaks to the resiliency of the American people. But that has to be balanced with all the other issues that have to be taken into account as we move forward with a plan for getting Americans back to work and out to their lives.
It seems like the biggest impediment has been the testing issue, diagnostic. In particular, we still haven't been able to test 1% of the population. We're still only testing those, it appears, with the most severe symptoms. We don't seem to know. Obviously, I know you guys are excited about an antibody test that may be coming out soon. What's realistic? When are we going to have the ability to test, as Governor Cuomo said, 30 million? He needs 30 million tests to feel comfortable lifting guidelines.
Well, Chuck, testing is one component of the response to the outbreak, in addition to the mitigation efforts. And you're right, the testing is both diagnostic, which we're working with developers every day. FDA is working with developers, innovators around the country to try to ramp up further testing. I think it's important for the American people to remember we have multiple systems around the country that use different platforms and different types of tests. What we're trying to do at this point is to actually increase some of those platforms that don't have a lot of utilization right now. Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci have spoken from the podium about that. So all hands on deck to try to get more diagnostic tests in. And we're seeing more people come forward with very novel approaches to getting more tests. So that is one component.
You know, with all due respect, Dr. Hahn, but can I pause you there? With all due respect, we're in April. It seems as if this testing problem has been over 2 months now, and we're still looking for innovation here. What went wrong? Why are we so? Other countries are testing at a higher rate. What went wrong? I know we initially blew it with the CDC. Is this the delay? I mean, the delay that you were able with lifting regulations, is that the reason we're in this situation?
I think there's going to be plenty of time to look back on this, and I think that's going to be really important. What I can tell you what FDA did is we started working with test developers on January 22nd. And Chuck, it's really important to remember that these tests have to be valid and accurate and reliable. So the science behind these has to be the right science. We've seen reports in other countries where the tests haven't been that accurate. And in many ways, having an inaccurate test is worse than actually having a test.
Right. Let me ask you this. You're fairly new into this position. Did you ever go through one of these pandemic exercises that the government, were you there the last time a pandemic exercise had taken place?
No, I wasn't. I was confirmed in December and started in late December, Chuck.
Do you feel as if, in hindsight, did you have enough people around you that had gone through this? I want to read you one email, and I know you want to look, you say that eventually you want to look backwards, but right now you don't. But I got to read you this very detailed New York Times story, one leaked email from the Red Dawn email exchange that I don't know if you were on some of this, but he said this: "We are making every misstep leaders initially made in tabletops at the outset of pandemic planning in 2006. We had systematically addressed all of these and had a plan that would work and had worked in Hong Kong, Singapore. We have thrown 15 years of institutional learning out the window and are making decisions based on intuition." Do you feel like you had enough institutional knowledge to deal with this pandemic?
So I'm not aware of that email. What I can tell you is I do feel that we've been surrounded by experts, particularly at FDA. We have a lot of scientific and clinical experts who know a lot about testing. So I do feel that there has been the appropriate expertise to help us get the tests, at least initially, where we need to be. And then obviously we have responded to the changing situation and changed our regulatory approach based upon that.
Have you felt pressure, though, political pressure from toning down sounding alarms? I mean, there's a lot of implications that some in the White House, the president himself, didn't like the sounding of alarms that was taking place about this virus over the last 6 weeks. Have you felt that pressure?
Chuck, I have not felt political pressure. I have not exerted political pressure on FDA. Where we do feel pressure is on the urgency of the situation. You pointed that out earlier in this conversation, and I think that's right. This is a rapidly moving, it's a novel coronavirus, and we have had to respond to that as information has come into us. So there is an urgency around this, but I have not received political pressure to have FDA make one decision versus another.
I know you are going to be approving some antibody tests soon. There's been some reports out of South Korea and their Center for Disease Control that some of these antibody tests aren't working. Some people seem to, they thought were antibodies, and then they end up getting the virus, not asymptomatic the first time, but symptomatic the second time. I know we keep learning more about this virus. Are you concerned these antibody tests won't work?
I am concerned that some of the antibody tests that are on the market that haven't gone through the FDA scientific review may not be as accurate as we'd like them to be. We've authorized one antibody test already, and I can assure the American people that what we're doing is using data and science to look at those tests to make sure that they're valid, they're accurate, and they're reproducible. We know, Chuck, that no test is 100% perfect, but what we don't want are wildly inaccurate tests because, as I said before, that's going to be much worse having a wildly inaccurate test than having no test.
I want to go back to reopening, and I know that you guys, the medical experts in the task force, are being confronted by the economic folks, and I get that. What do you feel has been the balance between economic pressure and medical advice on the task force?
I think we've had really good and vigorous debates. Since I've been on the task force, all the doctors are very free to express their opinion. The doctors debate issues, we exchange issues, we all bring information to the table. One thing, Chuck, that's been really helpful is in our interactions with people on the front lines. I consult colleagues on the front lines all the time. Bringing that information back to the task force and then discussing what's happening on the front lines, but also the data associated with infections and other things has been very helpful to provide the most up-to-date and accurate medical input into this. And we, the Vice President and the President, have always led with the medical input into this because, as I said, the primacy here is the safety and the welfare of the American people.
May 1st, is that a realistic date or not, or should Americans plan for a lot longer than May 1st?
We're looking at May 1st. Obviously, we want that to happen as soon as possible. I can't predict at this point because, as I said, things are happening very rapidly, but this team of doctors, this team of experts, all of government approach, they're focused at looking at the earliest possible time that we can get Americans back to work safely and to give Americans the confidence they need to make sure that these are the right decisions.
All right. It sounds like May 1st is more aspirational then, not a real target.
Well, I think we're looking at all these targets. If it can be May 1st, that would be great for the American people.
All right, Dr. Stephen Hahn, head of the FDA, thanks for coming on. I hope you enjoy your Easter, a Zoom event for many, many families around the country.
You bet, Chuck. It certainly will be. Thank you very much for having me.
Hello from Washington, I'm Chuck Todd, and thanks for checking out the Meet the Press channel on YouTube. Click on the button down here to subscribe and click over here to watch the latest interviews, highlights, and other digital exclusives.